an exercise, and although this is a webinar that doesn't have a lot of interaction throughout the session, I'm going to be posing things that I want you to stop and to think and reflect on. So I want you to sum up, count up these numbers on the screen. Okay, I'll give everyone some time to do it. Count it up. The harder part for me is I can't see when people are kind of done counting a little bit, so we'll just give a couple seconds. This is an exercise that's always fascinating for me. Most people will arrive at 55, but how people arrive at 55 is very different. Some count from left to right, some count from right to left, some count in groups of 10. So 9 plus 1 is 10, 8 plus 2 is 10, 7 plus 3 is 10, and so on, and then they count it up that way. Some count by groups of 11 and into groups of 5. The key here is that we can all arrive in many cases at the same outcome, but how we get there can be different. And in a lot of cases for Agile project managers, for project managers in general, we tend to see patterns. We tend to see and draw similarities to former experiences. And we can spot patterns like grouping by 10 or grouping by 11 to get to the answer faster. And it's using that knowledge, but using it in a different way in Agile that we're going to go forward with, and helping teams to spot those patterns, not just for us as project managers to spot the patterns and resolve them. So today's conversation and topic will be a little bit about how project managers use what we have, all the experiences, all the knowledge that we bring to the table, and leverage it to even produce even more results, to scale, to create the type of environment that promotes collaboration and ownership. So, who am I? My name is Tricia Broderick. I am an Agile Learning Facilitator here at Santion Group. That's a lot of fancy words for really my goal and objective is helping people surpass ceilings that they didn't realize they had. Build on successes that they've already been having and take it one step further. And so I'm really motivated by helping people. I focused it in software development. I've done development, project management. I've been the director of development for a company. I've done a lot of different roles, and in a lot of cases, that's what project management is a chameleon in many different roles as the team needs. And I like to have fun. I enjoy this. I like to build a solid team environment and laugh. And so although this isn't as interactive as I typically normally like when I'm doing training and giving out and sharing information, hopefully you'll laugh by some of the stories that I actually share today. So let's get started a little bit. Value of software. Mark Anderson actually wrote in the Wall Street Journal back in 2011 and kind of called out to attention that even companies that are not focused on building software are becoming software companies. There are endless examples. FedEx, there's a number that are listed on the screen there. It's almost a requirement to be competitive and innovative that building software is a foundation for most companies now. And so it's almost, as he put, eating the world. Software is eating the world. And the great part about that is project management is huge in making that a reality. We all talk about within project management the value of bringing customer satisfaction. Well, Agile Project Management brings customer satisfaction through a number of different things. Being focused on value, not just check marks of delivery. Being focused on it in a way that does it in an iterative fashion to allow for feedback. Because at the end of the day, a lot of that feedback is discovery as we're going through that. What's an interesting part that really comes into Agile Project Management is not just delivery for the customer satisfaction, which is a huge component, but it's also team satisfaction. And this is the area that we're going to spend a little bit of time, because the more you can have team satisfaction, in a lot of cases, they are the ones that will drive customer satisfaction. And so they get the satisfaction from customers. They also have a lot more focus on sustainability. We don't see as much turnover. We have more ownership and growth, and suddenly that scaling that you thought, how can I clone and make two of you, happens more and more. In order to understand that, we need to kind of come back a little bit to see how it's evolved and why there's a difference between Agile project management and project management. So if you look at a truly high-level simplification of it, you have kind of 3 tiers of methodologies that are out there. Very sequential type waterfall. This isn't to say that's a bad approach. There have been successful deliveries with waterfall. I have experienced that myself, as well as I know a number of people have. But there's pros and cons to that methodology. It was all up front. It was try and mitigate all your risks up front, design, and big bang, deliver at the end. But that came with a lot of complications, and so a lot of people started doing iterative and incremental, even within a waterfall kind of sense. So it may overall be waterfall, but you might release one whole subsystem in an iterative way. And that formed a lot of methodologies such as RUP and RAD and Spiral. The interesting ones that are coming out now are really still based in that iterative incremental. Still has the key foundational phases that were based in waterfall, right? Design, develop, testing, but it focuses on the collaborative nature. And that's where you get into more potential and more results for both the customers and for the team when you start focusing on that collaborative, iterative, and incremental methodologies. Now, a lot of people will confuse that the methodologies such as Scrum, well, that is Agile. And yes, it is a methodology that supports an Agile mindset. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means at a high level. But these, in this last tier, is really, in a lot of cases, methodologies that support Agile project management. Now let's talk a little bit about collaborative and what collaboration really truly means. Communication is conveying information. Okay, it's giving the right information at the right time in the right format. Cooperation is working together. It is being willing to give and take and working together on something. Collaboration is working together to create, to build together. There is a distinguishing nature with that. You suddenly no longer is it his idea or her idea, it's our idea. And that collaboration factor makes a huge difference in a team's shared ownership in delivery when it comes to customer satisfaction. And so the key is not just to have effective communication or effective cooperation, but to have high collaboration. Excuse me. So how do you do that as an Agile project manager? Well, you come to the plate, you have all of these experiences, you have all of this knowledge, and let's be honest, in a lot of cases as a project manager, you see issues before other people do, right? I've experienced this. There have been times that I'll see something happening and I'm thinking, how can no one else see this, right? And I get frustrated, I get annoyed, and so what do? I go into fix-it mode, right? I become the person that I saw the issue and I need to make sure we get ahead of it because we can't let down the customer, right? And all of these reasons would always come into my head, and they were always valid, right? We need to be fixing it, and we need to get ahead of it. And since I saw it, I'll fix it. In Agile project management, I'm not saying take away your ability to see it, right? Don't put your head in the sand and just ignore everything. Then yes, you have no value in input. I'm actually highlighting still see it. Go out there, spot the things, see what's happening. And then instead of fixing it, I want you to think about how can you shine this big, massive spotlight on that problem. Because if you can shine that spotlight on that problem and give your team an opportunity, they will not only see the issue, they will own it and then fix it. Now that will come in time, not the very first time you do it, not maybe even the second time, but overall that will occur. And suddenly that desire to clone person X starts to happen because they've not only started to be empowered to fix the problems, they're growing and learning and understanding how to fix those problems. So no longer are they dependent on you to be fixing, but they're dependent on you to help them fix it. And so how do you do that as a project manager? Now there are a lot of areas. Today, because this is a 1 hour session, I'm going to focus in on 3 areas in particular. Your mindset as an Agile project manager, Agile mindset in general, a leadership style as a project manager, and a technique of effective questions on something that you can leverage and use to help shine that spotlight. So let's get started in the first one, mindset. There's a book out there by Carol Dweck called Mindset, and it talks about 2 types of mindsets. Fixed mindset, which says, I can either do it or I can't. No amount of practice is ever going to make me really any better. I give up. Growth mindset is I can always get better. I have the ability to grow. Now, yes, talent plays into it. I'm 5'10" and not 17, so Olympic gymnast is probably not in my future. That said, it is always, can I do a cartwheel a little bit better if I practice? Probably. Despite even me as a trainer with this knowledge, it can be really easy to get stuck into that fixed mindset. Your teams can, and you can. The other day I was playing basketball with my son and he beat me, and the words that came out of my mouth was, oh, I should never play basketball, I'm just no good at that. And the words came out of my mouth in a fixed mindset because I was embarrassed, because it was hard to swallow that I might not be very good at something, that my 8-year-old just whooped me and now he's publicly sharing that with the entire gym and chanting it. And so it's really easy for us to go into those fixed mindsets, us personally and our team. And so as a project manager, it is incredibly important if you want to build high collaboration and you want that team satisfaction that delivers to customer satisfaction, to constantly be yourself in a growth mindset. I can try, I need to be vulnerable, I'm going to practice and work on this. But also, how do you help and support your team to maintain in that growth mindset? How do you help them see that exploring and pushing out of their comfort zones is growth, and that's a positive thing. They don't have to be rock star straight out of the gate. In fact, I will take somebody that is often willing to try new things over someone that is the most specialized, excellent person in one discipline who won't try anything else. It's about flexibility and scalability. Now, specialists have value? Absolutely not. Highlighting that. I'm just saying keep trying as much as possible as an Agile project management to keep yourself in that growth mindset as well as your team. Now, being willing to grow is one part. As a leader, it is incredibly important what your trust level is with your team. So a great book that I often refer back to is Stephen Covey's The Speed of Trust. And in that, there's really 4 areas of what's important that your team will look to you to trust whether or not they want to follow you, whether or not they want to help and see what you're shining that spotlight on. The first one is integrity. And that's really in terms of your character, are you honest? Are you humble? Are you courageous? What are characteristics of you that you're setting an example by behaving, right? That their first perceptions might be based on, okay, well, he's a very honest individual. Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And that's such a huge part in terms of building that trust. And it's the root, it's the foundation, right? Then you go into intent. If there was one thing that I would say is, as an Agile project manager, your intentions are not always super clear because you're a lot of cases behind the scenes, and we're going to talk about how that happens in leadership styles. But what I always will highlight is if I'm ever asked what my intention is, I'm always proud to give it. My intentions have to be honorable. They have to be good. I have to be with the mind of customer satisfaction or team satisfaction of anything that I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to do it. And it's such a base foundation part for how people will see you as a leader, not just as a manager. And then you have capabilities. And this is where your growth mindset comes into play, right? You need to grow your competence. You need to grow your skill sets. These things that we're going to be talking about today in the full encompass skill sets for Agile project managers don't happen overnight. They're practice, they're skill, and these are things that you will continue to develop and grow over time. And at the end of the day, results. I once worked for somebody that had the most wonderful integrity and intent, but at the end of the day, his competence and the results weren't there. And I used to highlight, you know, I think this individual bleeds pixie dust and glitter, but unfortunately, I couldn't trust that we would have the satisfaction in the end. So it takes both parts, both your character and your competence. And to build a tree, you know, in Stephen Covey's metaphor, that's strong enough and large enough, it takes time. And it's things that you'll need to work on. But when you do start to encompass this, you start to really embrace principles like when you're finished changing, you're finished. To be in that growth mindset, to constantly go, what can I try next? What can I do? What can I experiment? That leads to all sorts of innovation. It leads to all sorts of possibilities and surpassing ceilings that you didn't even realize that you were hitting. And it's an amazing thing when you've truly kind of embraced this philosophy. And then as a project manager, it is literally true that you can succeed best and quickest by helping others to succeed. You know, one of the fears in Agile project management is, well, if we have self-organizing teams, we don't need project managers. And I, in some regards, would agree with that. We don't need project managers. We need project leaders. We need people that are helping to create the right type of environment for people to be growing, to be learning, and to be pushing new boundaries. And Agile and project managers and Agile project managers bring this amazing wealth of experience and skill sets to actually accomplish this, more so than a lot of the other roles that I have personally experienced. So this is kind of that mindset, right? But there's also how you behave. And there are many different leadership styles. I've actually included just a few of them here. There's even more that are out there. And what's really important about leadership styles is understanding the effects. So let's walk through each one of these at a very, very high level. And I want you to think, when I describe it, be honest. Is this something that you tend to lead with that style in mind? Is it your primary approach? Is it an approach that you aspire to? Is it something that, wow, I never really thought about that. That might be something I want to try and achieve. So let's start with the first one, transactional. This is very much starts with the idea that team members agree to obey their leaders, their managers, when they accept a job. Here's the job that I'm assigning you. I will tell you what to do, and you will do it, and we will go from there. It's very formal in that regard. That has benefits, right? Someone comes in, they know what they need to do, they are given that, and they move forward. But there's not a lot of empowerment. There's not a lot of ownership that occurs with that. The next one is an extreme form of transactional leadership where the leaders have complete power. There is zero opportunity really for discussion, and really doesn't happen as much as people sometimes kind of believe happens or perceives happen, but it is out there. It's obviously not very well suited for an agile environment. Bureaucratic, that's more like by the book type leadership. Leaders follow rules rigorously. They make sure that everybody else is following the process and procedures exactly. This is where one of the Agile Manifesto values really hits home for me. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. I am a type A detailed-oriented person. I like my process. I like my process to be followed. And it at times created mixed messages for teams. I wanted them to be exploring how to be more efficient, but don't you dare not follow that process, because I was coming at it from a bureaucratic leadership style. The next one is democratic. And this is where project managers will tend to make the final decision, but they include everyone in the decision-making process. Everyone gets input, but at the end of the day, I make the decision. And at times that's absolutely necessary, especially at early stages of team development. And then at other times, it becomes a way for the leader to own the decision and not the team to own the decision. So it can be very detrimental in terms of true high performance. Laissez-faire, which is a French phrase that means leave it to be. And in some cases, you could say, well, this is really great. If my team is high performing, I'll just let them be and I won't touch them. In a lot of cases, that can be where actually a lot of people are like, does my manager even do anything? Are they even engaged? They don't know anything, right? Because it's almost too much. It's a disconnected way. Now, if you combine it with some of the other leadership styles and tensions, it can be really powerful too, because the team knows to step up and that they have to take control and ownership of the tasks at hand, which leads to task-oriented. This is when leaders can get so focused on the specific tasks at hand that they take away all empowerment from the team. I will follow up and make sure not only that the process is followed in a bureaucratic sense, but I will guarantee that I will personally follow up with each one of your tasks to make sure that that is done. And in some regards, our motivation behind that can be, well, we need to know if it's on track or not. But once we do that level of task-oriented leadership at a project management level, we take ownership. And the minute we take ownership, we get comments like, well, that was an unrealistic deadline to begin with. And we hear those kinds of statements because it's really easy for them to deflect ownership once we have taken it at that task ownership level leadership style. People-oriented leadership is where it's really totally focused on organizing, supporting, and developing the people on their teams. So-and-so really wants to work on their facilitation. How can I find them opportunities to work on facilitation, right? Looking for ways to really develop and grow not just the team satisfaction, but an individual satisfaction. Now, that can go too overboard, right? And you can almost lose sense of the customer satisfaction part. And so it's a great one to help with team and individual satisfaction, but can sometimes lose sight of customer satisfaction. And servant leadership is where leaders are really leading by example. You know, it's where they are serving the team. What issues can I help you with? Maybe it is an element of I see somebody that needs more support. Maybe I see somebody that needs more help with their time management, and I'm going to come in there with tasks. Serving the team in terms of their needs and helping them. And it's also where you really start to go, I can see problems, and I'm going to help serve the team and helping them to resolve the problems, not myself. Now, the reality is, these can be all a journey. As your team starts, you might find that you're more task-oriented. Then you move more into democratic as the team's starting to form and they're going into storming and whatnot. Then you're moving into people-oriented and helping people push outside of their comfort zones in order to really get into high performance. And then you move into servant. You might find that you mix these up because at the end of the day, leadership style should be situational. I once, when I was first understanding how my behavior impacted teams as a project manager for a small hosting screen team, I kept telling everybody, you're empowered, you're empowered. And then I would walk around and ask everybody if they finished their tasks. They ended up kind of getting the impression that I'm setting them up, right? Because if you believe in one thing and you're trying to promote one thing, you can't dangle another thing in front of them, right? And so your style really needs to be situational, and you need to understand the effects that the approach you're deciding to take is going to have on the team. If you decide that you definitely need to make the decision and have a democratic stance, then understand that in some ways you own this decision, and how are you going to help the team further own it as you progress along. Okay? So now we've talked about mindset. We've talked about your behavioral in terms of leadership style. Let's talk a little bit about a technique that you can use in combination with these to really help shine a spotlight on. And there's effective questions. This is also referred to as powerful questions. And here's what ultimately they're about: encouraging collaboration and insight and ownership for the participants. So the goal is to use open questions, not closed. You know, if you give a yes/no kind of question, people are going to give you a yes/no and stop answering. Open up for participation. You know, does anyone else have an idea? Focus on the future. What else can we do? What's the potential? What do we need to do next? And each of these questions, you're asking kind of searching questions, trying to gather more insight, gather input from different people so that they're working together for the wisdom of the group. But there are some careful steps with it. Be careful with asking why. The minute I ask a why, first, people get defensive, right? Why is she asking me why? And you're having this kind of play out in your head. So try and use different words when you're coming through, because why can be a really defensive question for people. And the really hard part that I personally struggled quite a bit with was responding without ownership. Make sure that it's clear that you're looking for them to run with the idea, that you're looking for them to own the results, and what's going to play out with that. Because if you have a solution in mind and you ask questions, it's kind of can be easy sometimes to take that ownership. So let people experiment, let them own it, and see and support them. Do the servant leadership style and help them as they're running with their idea. Now, sometimes those ideas are not very good and you do have to step in, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. Unfortunately, all of this isn't like reading a book, and I can't unfortunately say, hey, we're just going to have this intro to Agile Project Management, you're going to walk out and you're going to be the most stellar experienced Agile Project Manager. You can't learn it from reading a book, but you can learn it by understanding, being exposed to it, and practicing. So let's do that today. Okay. If you don't have a piece of paper, you might want to grab one and grab a pen as well, and write near for yourself as you're going through that. We're going to go through a couple scenarios, and I'm going to ask that you write things down and practice a little bit. Okay. So the goal is to go from an Agile project manager who is experienced and knowledgeable, who can see the issues before they're occurring, and thinking about how will you use an effective question to shine a spotlight on it. Okay, so let's go with the first one. This is just, it's kind of more of a status board than truly a Kanban board that says, here's the task. It's day 2 of the sprint. You have 3 developers and 1 tester. Writing down on a note right now, I want you to highlight, what do you see? What issues do you see that from right here? You know, what things does your experience and knowledge help you spot that is going to be problems with 3 developers and 1 tester? And I'll give you a little bit of time. Okay. Did you spot maybe that the developers are multitasking? If there's really only 3 developers and you have 5 tasks in development, what's going on, right? Why are we multitasking? It's very inefficient. What's going on? What's happening there? In addition, maybe if they all finish at the same time, what's going to happen to test? There's going to be a bottleneck for test. You may have come up with other ones, right? You might see something that your experience helps you to spot something else that you see on this board. You're still going to see the issues. That's fantastic. Now what's really important is, how do you shine a spotlight on it? So instead of coming in and going, we're multitasking too much and we're going to create a bottleneck for the testers, what are some effective questions that you might ask your team to help shine a spotlight on the issues you're seeing? I'll give you some time. So these are a couple examples. They're not the only right answers. What will happen if someone gets sick this week, right? Helping them to see, well, if everything's already in progress and someone gets sick, how is someone else supposed to help with that task because they won't know where they're at? What will happen if everyone finishes development at the same time? Help them walk through the scenario, further, take those steps next into the flow. There are many questions that could be right. Make them your own, right? There is no magical formula of an effective question except for the elements that you need to have. But you have your own style. Make your questions your own style. The key is not taking ownership and promoting that collaboration within the team. Seeing the problem as you spot it. What experience do you have that helps them understand that that's an issue or a potential issue? Okay, let's do the next one. Additional context. This is a burn-up chart. They just finished iteration 8, so the blue line ends at the tick mark for 8, and the release really only has 10 iterations targeted. So what problems do you see? What issues? Maybe you helped identify, wow, that trend line, they're not going to finish on time, right? They're going to be short of the scope or the targeted scope. Maybe you also recognized, hey, they had a fairly steady completion line. Did we really plan this from the beginning to be ideal right from the get-go? Maybe there are other things that you spot in this. What the key part is now, what is an effective question you're going to ask the team to help them see that this is an issue, not for you to come in and say, oh, sorry, we're going to miss the deadline. Let me go fix this with the product owner. So give you some time to think about an effective question you might ask. So here are a couple examples. When does it appear we will complete all the scope? Just putting it on the question. Maybe you don't draw the red dotted line, you have the team draw it. And ask them what do they think in terms of when it's going to complete. What will it take to complete the release on time? Here's your searching question, your future question. Putting it on them. What is it going to take? It's so easy for us because of our experience sometimes to say, well, this is what we're going to have to do to actually get on time. Ask the team. Sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. Let's try another one. This is a velocity chart, tracking measurement chart. You're at the planning meeting for iteration 5, what they've committed and what they've completed each time for the first 3 iterations. I'm sorry, you're at planning meeting for iteration 4. I need to correct that error. I apologize. So what do you see? So this is an interesting one. This is actual data from a former project of mine, where I was helping the team learn how to make true commitments for their sprints. And you can see in the first one, we didn't know what we were doing, and they committed, and they did so. The next one, because they didn't make their commitment, they really overcommitted to try and compensate for what they didn't do, and they did a little bit better, but still couldn't suddenly do 60 story points. And so what happens in the next iteration? They massively under commit, right? It's almost like that piece of cake. Well, she's burning it into our heads that we need to deliver what we commit to, so let's make sure we only commit to what we can. So my concern is in iteration 4, will they still continue to dramatically undercommit? Will they look at their trend and make a realistic one? And so what are the effective questions that you could ask? So what can this team commit to delivery for iteration 4? At the end of the day, these are lessons that they're going to have to continue to learn. Yes, you need to take into account customer delivery, and I work very closely with product owners when we're learning these lessons. But at the end of the day, the team still needs to understand and own what they're going to commit. But maybe there's some other leading questions, like what do we need to consider if we over deliver in an iteration? What are the things that make that a bad situation? And help them think through those searching questions. Let's try a different style one. Here's a retrospective meeting notes. Now, I wish I could tell you that this was totally fabricated, but I actually have been in a retrospective where I observed the meeting notes, and this was the exact words that were on the retro notes. What do you see? Vague and not very actionable, right? Next retrospective is likely just going to repeat these same exact ones, and in this case it had repeated for 3 retrospectives, and that there's no appreciation items, that there's nothing that the team was celebrating. So what effective question might you pose to your team if this were what you observed? Maybe you would have highlighted what would have to be true for this team to move communication to the what went well column, right? Helping them dive into a SMART goal, in terms of measurability and so actionable. Or what, and for the what went well, what would be an event or action that would deserve celebration? you'd be surprised sometimes just asking the question, or like, oh yeah, this, and well, we did accomplish this, and they just don't always think to celebrate as much as working to improve. And you definitely want to have the balance. And then the final one that we're going to walk through today, this is a project manager's log of the duration of a daily touch point or a stand-up meeting, huddles, anything that you're doing. And the target is 15 minutes, not to exceed 15 minutes. This is the log from the last several sessions. What do you see? That the trend is going up, right? That you're not only exceeding 15, now we're getting close. We've doubled, and there's no trend line of reprieve from this. So it could be very easy as a project manager to walk in and say, well, sorry, we need to change this. We're going beyond 35 minutes. But that there's a reason that the team is going beyond 35 minutes, and what that is. And so first, let's focus on an effective question to highlight the problem. Maybe you have something written like, I've been tracking the duration of the project meetings or daily touch point meetings. Are these durations acceptable? Maybe you see an issue, but maybe the team doesn't. Maybe they're finding value in it. You may need to reflect and see, why do you believe it is an issue? Is there something else that they are losing value that you have to help them see? And help them know and own how they would get the meeting back to under 15 minutes. I might have suggestions. I might have a post daily touch point meeting board to log, and parking lot to log things. That might be my solution. It might be a really effective solution, but it's my solution, not the team's. And so how do you help them take that ownership? Is you help them come up with ideas. You help them learn and grow and take that ownership. So you might ask a question like, how would you recommend getting back to under 15 minutes? Now, this was a really fast practice through just a couple examples. And in some cases, some of you might have found that, oh, effective questions come pretty easy. Others might have really struggled with it because the solution they have in mind, wanting to be efficient and getting it fixed right away. I can say that the first time using effective questions was posed to me. The challenge was to go back to my office, go back to my team, and for one day, don't answer a single question, only ask with questions, only ask effective questions. And I probably got about 3 questions in before I wanted to actually hurt myself, because it was insane. It was difficult. I was an fix-it person. I was somebody that wanted the efficiency and wanted to get things done. And it's a journey that you have to take in building of a relationship. The first times you ask kind of these questions, people are going to go, what is she leading us to? Or what is she trying to get at? Why doesn't she just tell us? Over time, you will learn which effective question, at what time, just like the communication, the right format, the right time, the right information. You'll learn that for effective questions as well. And the result of it will be that team satisfaction that delivers that customer satisfaction. And so when you talk about Agile Project Management, at the core, you are helping to create value-driven software because you're helping to create high-performing teams. And you do that by creating an environment where you spot issues. That doesn't change, but you help others own and resolve those issues for the scalability, for the innovation, the creativity, the flexibility that comes from high-performing teams. And today we covered ways that you can work on your mindset, your leadership style, and a technique of effective questions to accomplish that. I want to thank you for spending your lunch, in a lot of cases, for a lot of you in the Eastern Time Zone, with me. I appreciate it. And we're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to unmute everyone. If you would like to remain muted, please go ahead and mute yourself back. And how do I do this?
Unmuted.
Or go ahead and maybe I can't do that. I'm going to unmute everybody. If you would like to be muted, please mute yourself back afterwards. And open it up for questions. Or I was asked to actually, instead of unmuting everybody, I was asked to actually have you use the raise the hand feature, and I'll see that, and then I'll unmute you specifically in that case. Okay. Well, thank you for spending your time with me today. Have a wonderful afternoon. And if you need anything, you can, I believe that this session will be recorded, and you'll receive a follow-up. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.